And what this slide is supposed to represent is the different types of partners that we work with, because this again plays into the type of data that we have access to. So we're seeing transactions coming through Chase, through Braintree and PayPal, through Barclays, BlueSnap, and others. We have about 40 plus partners across the globe, and all the data that we have access to through their networks helps us in identifying fraud. And the way that differentiates us from some of our competitors is that we're not just reliant on one set of data. So to put as an example, we're not reliant on only Visa's network. We can see transactions from other providers as well. Whereas you might take a Radar, which is a fraud solution offered by Stripe. Radar's fraud solution is going to be limited to Stripe's data network, whereas we have access to all the data from the partners that I showed on the previous slide, as well as the direct clients we showed you as well also. This slide, we can skip over this very quickly. I wanted to highlight here in the center that Kount is payment processor agnostic. And what's great about that is you guys are able to shop around for different rates through various processors and not have to worry about switching e-commerce platforms or switching fraud prevention providers. So we make it very convenient for you to shop around processors. So this is the most important slide I want you guys to remember. At the top here, you see the 3 green circles around the edge. You have maximize revenue, minimize risk, and reduce cost. These are the 3 main goals that all businesses have. And even though we've seen a lot of change really in the e-commerce environment today, so we've seen new one-click checkouts, different payment types, subscription models, and all that fun stuff. Those 3 main goals have remained the same with all the businesses that we've spoken with. And the way that Kount solves for those goals is through the 4 cornerstones here in the center of the circle. So the data, the intelligence, the platform, and the people. We'll dive into those really quickly before we go into the user interface, but at a high level, Kount has access to all the data from the partners and direct merchants that we showed you in the beginning of the presentation. And having a great set of data is very valuable, but you need to be able to make sense of that data, and that's where the intelligence piece comes in. So Kount uses 2 types of machine learning, and I won't bore you guys with that stuff. I know it's not that exciting. But we take that information, we run it through our machine learning, and then instead of just spitting out a response for you, either an approve or decline, we have a platform that you can log into and interact with to see all the history of your transactions and what transactions were approved or declined or put in a review phase. So you really have that transparency. And then last but not least is the people component. We give you access to the great product that we have today, but we don't just say good luck to you. Thanks for signing up with Kount. Here you go. We have people on our customer success team that are dedicated to ensuring that you guys understand the product and are utilizing it in the best way possible for your company. So really quickly, this is just showing you, this is the tip of the iceberg here is the type of data that many of you have access to when you're making a decision on a transaction. So the merchant data, the order data, any sort of consumer data, and below the iceberg is the extra data that Kount is able to complement the data you already have with in order to help you make a more accurate decision on a transaction as to whether it's fraudulent or not. And this slide really replicates that last one with the iceberg, but shows you some of the details. So outside of the information you see on the right, we provide all this information here on the left in addition to that when you're making your decision. And we talked earlier about Radar being limited to Stripe's network, Adyen is limited to Adyen's network, and so on and so forth. As I mentioned, Kount is access to information from Chase, Braintree, PayPal, Barclays, and the 40 plus other partners we have from across the globe. So we have a wider variety of data available to us. Again, the machine learning, we use 2 types, unsupervised and supervised. They're really looking at the transaction from different perspectives. If you can imagine you have a fraud analyst on your staff, an experienced one, think of the unsupervised machine learning as a fraud analyst instinct. So they're using any sort of instincts they have on that transaction. And then the supervised machine learning is their experience. This slide right here replicates the unsupervised machine learning. So if you can imagine just this data on the left-hand side here, you have a device, a credit card, and an email. So someone has visited your website, they're looking to make a transaction. You have access to that data here. You may say, we've seen this card on our website before and they've tried to make a transaction, but that might be the extent of the knowledge you have. And so it's tough to make a decision on that transaction and determine whether it's fraudulent or not. But what Kount's able to do through the data that we have access to is link across our network and all of our partners and all of our other merchants to say, have we seen this card used before with a different device? In this case, we have. That device was used with a different email. That email was used with a different card, and so on and so forth. You get the picture. So instead of looking at one device, one card, and one email attached to a particular buyer, we see that that particular buyer has been attached to 5 different credit cards, 3 different devices, and 10 different emails. So that looks a lot more suspicious. Moving into the process on how it works, we just kind of talked through this, but in sense, we are taking information about the device being used. So if you can imagine a consumer is visiting your website, as soon as they reach your checkout page, either on their mobile device or the computer, we're collecting some information and interrogating that device through some JavaScript that sits on your checkout page. We're looking at things like if a proxy is being used. If so, we pierce through that proxy to determine the actual location of the device. In addition, we're fingerprinting that device to see, have we seen it before? And then also we're looking at all the card information they're putting in and any sort of information that you require the customer to enter on your site. We take all of that information, we run it through the machine learning, the 2 different types like we talked about, and we give you a score, in this case an Omni score, that tells you how safe the transaction is. So on a scale of 0 to 99, with 99 being the most safe, we provide you some feedback on that transaction. That's where a lot of our competitors will stop, and they'll allow you to make the decision, or they'll make it on your behalf based off just that machine learning. But what Kount is able to do, and this is very unique to us, is that we can combine that with any sort of unique business policies that you guys have. So I know there's a lot of companies in your industry where you want to shut off, and you may have already shut off, declining a transaction if the billing and shipping do not match. So we can turn that back on for you, but we can set specific thresholds. For instance, if someone was ordering, take for example, a lift kit, you may say, we want to allow them to ship it to an installer of the lift kits, but we're hesitant to do that because we've been burned in the past. So you could set a specific rule that would say if the billing device or the billing address is within 500 kilometers of the shipping address, then we're okay with that transaction. It might be someone shipping that lift kit to a friend to install it for them or something along those lines. So we'll get into that when I show you the user interface. But what you need to know is this whole process takes place in under 250 milliseconds. So there's no additional friction to your customer checkout, and they have no idea that this is actually going on. So before we jump into the user interface and we'll show you how a lot of this actually works, I want to bring up the pricing for web shop. And Paulette, feel free to chime in here if you want, but essentially to get Kount through web shop, you would pay a one-time fee, a professional services fee of $2,000. And then as far as monthly fees, it's $500 for up to 3,000 risk inquiries. And a risk inquiry can be anything that you would like to send that looks risky. So for most companies, it's 1 risk inquiry to 1 transaction, if you want to think about it like that. But right now, we're actually running a special for SEMA, and throughout the rest of the month of November, if you do sign up for Kount, we waive 50% of this professional services fee. So to get started with Kount, it would cost you $1,000 professional service fee and $500 per month. And if you're interested, here's Paulette's information. I'm sure most of you guys already have it. We can see here on the left-hand side, this shows you your Omni score again, which we talked about was the safety score for the transaction. This particular one is at a 27.3 or a grade of an F, so not a very safe transaction. We can see some very high-level information here, your billing and shipping. In this case, it does actually match, so that wouldn't necessarily throw up a red flag for you. You can see shopping cart information. Maybe you guys have specific items on your website that fraudsters are targeting more so than others. Down here in the review details section, We can see again the safety rating, the grade, any sort of distances. So the distance between the billing and shipping in this case is 0 because they match, but we did see that there was a proxy being used on this device and we were able to pierce it. And so in this case, the device is actually located in Hanoi, Vietnam. And if you click on this link here, you can see where exactly, or the distance between the two. So quite significant to the point where I don't think I'd feel comfortable accepting that transaction. Our persona score here tells you the riskiness of this particular customer. So it's, if you could think of it, it's the opposite grading scale of the Omni score. So 99 in this case being the most risky. And that's because the device is located in Vietnam, one of the most risky countries for transactions online. We also had the distance being quite significant between the shipping device and the billing device, including the actual device location. Velocity here, you can see we have two different velocity checks. So velocity is checking how many attempts were, how many transaction attempts were made on your site by this particular person in a 2-week period. So in this case, we can see 12, which is quite a lot. The Vmax focuses on any 6-hour window of that 2-week period. So we can see at one point during the 6-hour window of that 2-week period, there was 4 transaction attempts, which is going to boost the riskiness of this particular score. Here on the persona section, you can see the score was 99. And we mentioned that there was 12 order attempts made by this customer on this particular merchant site over a 2-week period. If we click on this link, we can see all of the orders that were attempted by them, the safety rating attached to each one, and then the status. So this one's in a review. These ones were all declined, and you get the picture. You can see most of the devices. Well, every time we pierce through the proxy, and the device was located in Vietnam. So that's where you would go to review orders. Again, you can make that very quick and easy, or if you can really dig down and make it more granular, if that's what you want to do. And I know that a big common theme is if billing and shipping don't match, maybe we just decline the order. And the fear I have with that for you guys is that you might be turning away a lot of good orders based on that. I know for myself personally, I'm not a mechanic and I'm not very good with working on things, but when I order my lift kit or something like that, I would probably want to ship it to the shop that I'm going to have install it for me. So I'd hate to have my order declined. And I think that that's probably pretty common. So what we can do here is we can allow you guys to start accepting those orders again, but we can put some restrictions on it. So if we go down to distance here, we can say, up here in the right-hand corner, sorry, I'm bouncing around here on you guys, but up here in the right-hand corner, there's decline, escalate, review, or approve. These are the different types of rules you can set up. So in this case, we'll do approve. But I want to touch on no change here. What that allows you to do is to create a rule that you can see the results of without actually affecting the result of that transaction. So if that makes sense. So if we wanted to try seeing what the results would be by putting a rule in for a certain distance between billing and shipping, we could create that rule, select no change, and then you would see how your results for the transactions would be different if that rule was applied.